15 years of marriage. 15 years of raising a son together. Only to hear the man you love say coldly, "I never really believed he was mine." What would you do if your whole life, your family, and your trust were shattered by one sentence? Tonight, we uncover a heartbreaking story of doubt, betrayal, and a DNA test that tore a family apart, and the shocking twist that no one saw coming. Welcome to Breakup, Cheater, where true emotions meet chilling truths. Real stories of heartbreak, betrayal, and the human soul at its breaking point. If you crave stories that stay with you long after the night ends, you're in the right place. I still remember the way his voice sounded that evening. Flat, cold, almost mechanical. We were sitting in the living room, the faint hum of the TV in the background, our 15-year-old son, Ethan, upstairs finishing his homework. The scent of the chicken stew I had cooked for dinner still lingered in the air. It should have been just another ordinary night, but then my husband, Daniel, looked at me with eyes I could no longer recognize and said the words that shattered my world. I never really believed he was mine. For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. My heart skipped a beat, my fingers froze over the mug of tea I was holding, and I blinked at him as if he had just spoken a foreign language. What are you saying?" I managed to whisper. Daniel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, jaw clenched. His voice was steady, but his knuckles were white as he gripped the armrest. "I want a DNA test," he said. "I've lived with this doubt for too long. It's time to know the truth." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. This was the man I had loved for 17 years, the father of my child, the one who had held my hand during Ethan's birth, who had sung him to sleep, who had spent sleepless nights with me when our boy was sick. And now he was telling me he never really believed. That all those years, there was a seed of doubt poisoning him. "Daniel, how could you even think?" My voice cracked. "How could you think I would ever?" His eyes narrowed, and for the first time I saw something raw there. Not anger. Not yet. But something darker. Years of suppressed suspicion. "Because Claire," he interrupted, his voice sharp, "you remember that time when Ethan was just a baby? When you disappeared for a weekend with your friends? The one you said was a girls' trip. I found out Mark was there too." Mark. A name I hadn't heard in over a decade. My old college friend. Daniel had always been jealous of him, though there had never been anything between us. At least, not in the way Daniel was now suggesting. "That was nothing," I said, my voice trembling. "Mark was he was a part of the group. Nothing happened, Daniel. Nothing." He stared at me like he was trying to read a lie etched on my face. "I want the test," he said finally. "If you're telling the truth, then you have nothing to worry about." The next week passed in a fog of silent meals and forced smiles for Ethan's sake. He had no idea his father was questioning his very existence. I tried to talk Daniel out of it, tried to reason, to remind him of the years of love and laughter we had shared, but his mind was made up. When the day came, we went to the clinic together. Ethan thought it was some sort of routine checkup. We didn't tell him the real reason. I watched as the nurse swabbed his cheek, then mine, then Daniel's. My hands were cold, my stomach in knots. Daniel didn't hold my hand. Waiting for the results was torture. I replayed every moment of our marriage in my head. The late nights, the arguments, the jokes, the intimate moments. Was there ever a time I had crossed a line? No. I knew, with every fiber of my being, that Ethan was Daniel's son. But knowing it in your heart and proving it on paper are two very different things. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, while Daniel slept with his back to me. The distance between us felt like a canyon. When the call finally came, I almost didn't want to pick up. The doctor asked us both to come in. His voice was calm, but there was something in the way he said, "You should both be here for this," that made my stomach drop. We sat in his office, the clock ticking far too loud on the wall. The doctor glanced at the papers in front of him, then at us. "Before I show you the results," he said carefully, "I want to remind you that DNA tests are conclusive. Whatever you see here is the truth." "Just tell us," Daniel said, his voice clipped. The doctor looked at me, His expression softened slightly. "Mrs. Carter," he said slowly, "you should prepare yourself." I felt the room tilt. Prepare myself. For what? He slid the paper across the desk. My eyes scanned the lines, the percentages, the cold, clinical numbers that had the power to destroy a family. And then I saw it. Probability of paternity, 0%. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. "No," I whispered. "No, this has to be wrong. There's no way." Daniel's chair scraped against the floor as he stood. His face had gone pale. Not triumphant, not angry, just hollow. "So it's true," he said, his voice breaking. "All these years." "No," cried Daniel, "I swear to you, I never cheated. There has to be some mistake. This test, the samples, something went wrong." He shook his head slowly, his eyes glistening. "I believed you," he whispered. "Even when the doubt ate at me. I wanted to believe you." The days that followed were a blur of cold shoulders and slammed doors. Daniel moved into the guest room. He barely spoke to me. Ethan noticed, of course. He's not a little boy anymore. One night he came into my room, his eyes wide with worry. "Mom, did I do something?" he asked. "Dad's been weird." "Did I? Is this about me?" I hugged him so tightly he squirmed. "No, sweetheart. This isn't your fault. Not even a little." But inside I was breaking. Because how do you explain to your child that his entire identity had just been questioned? That his father wasn't really his father? Not in blood anyway. I spent hours calling the clinic, demanding a retest. They agreed. Another round of swabs, another agonizing wait. And when the second results came back, they said the same thing. Daniel filed for divorce 2 weeks later. He didn't yell. He didn't call me names. He just shut down. As if all the love we had built was nothing more than a fragile illusion shattered by a piece of paper. Months passed. I lived in a haze of court dates, custody discussions, and whispered rumors among neighbors who had heard just enough to assume the worst. And then one rainy afternoon the phone rang. It was the clinic. "Mrs. Carter," the voice said, hurried and apologetic. "We need you to come in immediately. There's been an error." My heart stopped. When I arrived, the head geneticist was waiting with a folder in his hands. His face was pale. "Mrs. Carter, I'm afraid we made a terrible mistake," he said. "The first 2 tests, there was a labeling error in the lab. Ethan's sample was accidentally swapped with another patient's. We've repeated the test 3 more times under strict conditions." He slid the paper to me. My hands trembled as I read it. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. I sank into the chair, sobbing, not just from relief, but from the bitter, searing anger that followed. All of this, the coldness, the divorce filing, the broken family, it was all for nothing. Called Daniel. My hands shook as I held the phone. "They made a mistake," I said, my voice hollow. "You're his father. Oolong. It was always you." Silence on the line. Then a soft, broken whisper. "Claire." But it was too late. Something had cracked in me. Something I wasn't sure would ever heal. "You didn't believe me," I said. "Not once. You didn't fight for me. You didn't even ask me again. You went straight for the divorce papers." "I was scared," he said quietly. "I lived with that fear for so long. And when I saw the paper I thought. You thought the worst of me." Another silence. Then, "Can I come home?" Closed my eyes. Once that question would have made me feel safe. Now it only made me feel tired. "Ethan deserves to know the truth," I said finally. "But as for us, I don't know, Daniel. I don't know if we can go back." The day we told Ethan, he cried big, heaving sobs that shook his shoulders. He hugged his father, then me, and whispered, "I thought you guys didn't want me anymore." And in that moment, I realized something. The real damage hadn't come from the test. It had come from the doubt, the lack of trust, the willingness to believe the worst. Love can survive mistakes, but it struggles to survive suspicion. Today, it's been 6 months since the truth came out. Daniel and I share custody now. Talk. Sometimes we even laugh. But the marriage? It's a shadow of what it was. Sometimes at night I think back to that moment in the living room. The smell of chicken stew, the flicker of the TV, the coldness in his voice, and I wonder, did the DNA test destroy us? Or did it just reveal what was already broken? One piece of paper changed their lives forever. Not because of what it proved, but because of what it exposed. How fragile trust can be when doubt takes root. Love is built on faith, and once that faith is broken, sometimes even the truth can't fix it. What would you have done? Could you ever forgive?